This is all about Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things, questions, and markets related to Bitcoin. Little b for the currency and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation. All Bitcoin, all the time. Checking in on Bitcoin right now. CoinDesk Bitcoin price XVX index now just over $19,000, down over the past 24 hours about almost just 0.4%. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, chosen globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. Here's our CoinDesk Bitcoin News Roundup. Strike, a Chicago-based Bitcoin payment provider run by crypto entrepreneur Jack Mallers over here, raising $80 million in a Series B funding round led by 1031. A company news release saying other participants include Washington University in St. Louis, the University of Wyoming, and previous investors. The fresh capital will be used to enhance Strike's payment network for merchants and consumers, which already includes several big e-commerce companies like Blackhawk, NCR, and Shopify. Meanwhile, crypto billionaire Jihan Wu, the founder of Bitcoin mining rig maker Bitmain, is setting up a $250 million fund to purchase distressed assets from mining firms. Bloomberg reporting Wu's BitDeer Technologies will initially invest $50 million and aims to raise another $200 million from outside investors. The collapse in Bitcoin's price, combined with rising energy costs, have left many miners struggling to keep their heads above water, with data center operator Compute North filing for bankruptcy last week amid mounting debts. And a pair of high-profile resignations in the crypto industry. Brett Harrison, the president of crypto exchange FTX U.S., announcing on Twitter he is stepping down from his role, transferring his responsibilities and moving into an advisory role at the company over the next few months. And Alex Mashinsky, the CEO of bankrupt crypto lender Celsius Network, is resigning. A company news release saying that Chief Financial Officer Chris Ferraro will become Chief Restructuring Officer and interim CEO immediately. Celsius was one of the first in a long list of crypto companies that succumbed to the pressures of this year's bear market and contagion from the collapse of the Terra ecosystem, which saw $60 billion in value evaporate in May. All right, joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk's U.S. regulatory reporter Cheyenne Ligon. Cheyenne, great to have you on the show. So you've been covering these developments on CoinDesk.com for us. And so let's start with Brett Harrison's departure at FTX. FTX was also in the news recently for winning the Voyager digital asset auction. So what do we know so far?
Yeah, I mean, all we know so far is that FTX is making moves, figuratively and literally. So yes, they won the auction to buy Voyager's assets, which was kind of a surprise considering that, I guess, only 3 months ago they were rejected outright as having a lowball bid as an offer. But that's settled now. And then they're moving to Miami. So that's exciting.
They're moving to Miami. And any word on why Brett is stepping down?
We don't know. We've asked, we haven't gotten an answer, but he will not be transferring to Miami for this job. But it is surprising because only 4 months ago, FTX U.S. opened up its headquarters in Chicago, and we don't know why they're leaving. And even before he joined FTX U.S., Brett has been based in Chicago. So, it seems like he's just going to stay there.
Is he going to stay within the crypto industry?
That's what his Twitter thread said. I haven't spoken to him directly, but I think he's also remaining on as an advisor for FTX.
All right. Moving on, the Block is reporting that Zach Dexter will be the new head of FTX U.S. and that FTX is moving its U.S. headquarters to Miami, just like you said, only 4 short months after cutting the ribbon on its headquarters in Chicago. So very soon indeed. And we're looking at Celsius CEO Alex Mashinsky also resigning today. In a news release, his resignation letter reads in part, quote, "I regret that my continued role as CEO has become an increasing distraction." Maybe you can elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's been kind of a pretty common thread that I've seen in reporting on Celsius, that a lot of people are very angry that Alex Mashinsky stayed in the role and continued to draw such a large salary for doing so. And, I think maybe they just decided, okay, this is a distraction. And it seems like that's what he acknowledged in his letter. So he will be handing over the reins to the CFO of Celsius, which I'm not sure how much better that will be for a lot of people that are still waiting to get their money back. But that's the plan.
Sure. And, the other day, we also reported that Kraken CEO Jesse Powell will become chairman of the board of directors. So he's also stepping down from his role leading Kraken, which he's also co-founder of. Maybe you could tell us about the person who's replacing him.
Yeah, so all we know so far is that the COO of Kraken, Dave Ripley, will be taking over for Jesse. And I personally don't know much about him. I just know that he told reporters shortly after the announcement came out that Kraken will not be registering with the SEC. So it seems like already, before he's even taken over the job, he's kind of adopting Jesse Powell's defiant streak. So I expect that Kraken will kind of keep sailing on the way that it has been.
Yes. Throughout Jesse Powell's tenure, he has said a couple of controversial things that have irked his staff, including questions about, women's intelligence, whether or not it's equal to that of men's. That question, he said, wasn't settled or something down those lines. He also made reference to woke activists that if they weren't happy at his company, that maybe they should leave. I wonder, is that kind of company culture something that will continue under Ripley's tenure?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. It's certainly something that we'll be keeping an eye out for. It's hard to know how much of that was Jesse Powell, who's a pretty avowed and self-described libertarian, and how much of that is Kraken company culture. But it's hard for me to imagine that he would hand over the reins to somebody that he felt like was going to run his company in a way that he wouldn't want it to be run. So I don't know. I can speculate that it would stay relatively the same, but who knows? We'll have to watch.
Finally, Cheyenne, just one last question. What's the wider narrative of crypto execs leaving during a turbulent market right now?
It's definitely, there's enough of them now to say that it's a trend. I mean, aside from the 3 that we've talked about today, there's been a few more high-profile resignations over the last couple months. In August alone, we saw 3 resignations. Genesis CEO Michael Morrow stepped down, MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor stepped down, and also the co-CEO of Alameda Research, which is under the Sam Bankman-Fried umbrella, also stepped down and left the position to his co-CEO Caroline. There's been a lot of change, a lot of turmoil. Maybe it's just a bear market thing, but everybody's citing different reasons. But it's definitely a trend.
Yep, lots of turnover happening. All right, Cheyenne, thank you so much for your reporting. That was CoinDesk's U.S. regulatory reporter Cheyenne Ligon. All right, coming up, BTC Markets analysis with Canadian crypto savings and credit platform Ledn.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
Bitcoin Bitcoin on a rocky roller coaster ride Tuesday, rising and falling about 7% each direction over the past 24 hours. Though the New York Times noting that compared to other fiat currencies around the world, Bitcoin is in positive territory over the past 7 days. Interestingly, Bitcoin's rise coincided with the Asian trading day, which closed in the green. Bitcoin's subsequent fall ran parallel to the European and U.S. trading day, which are in the red. The UK's pound recovering somewhat following the new British government's plan to implement the biggest tax cuts in 50 years while boosting government borrowing and spending amid high inflation. Nevertheless, the Bank of England's chief economist responding that will be met with a, quote, significant response by monetary policy officials. All right, joining us now to discuss the BTC market and the broader markets is Mauricio D. Bartolomeo. He's the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Canadian crypto savings and credit platform Ledn. Thanks for joining us, Mauricio. Good to see you. So why do you think we're seeing these wild swings in Bitcoin over the past 24 hours?
Yeah, great to be here, Christine. Thanks for having me. I think broadly speaking, you can attribute some of the recent moves to markets reacting to the aftermath of the Fed decision last week. The Fed came up with 75 basis points and signaled that it wants to keep rates high for all of 2023, which is what I think caught some investors off guard. Now, on the back of this, you started seeing some wild moves on foreign currencies, in particular, the Great British Pound, the Euro, even the Canadian dollar. So going back to the point you made earlier, since the Fed decision, Bitcoin is actually holding up better than gold in dollar terms, the Canadian dollar, the Great British Pound, euros, etc. And I think a big part of this dynamic is that as you see some of these foreign currencies come under pressure, in many markets around the world, Bitcoin is seen as a conduit to buy US dollars if you have challenges accessing that US dollar. Because of peer-to-peer markets, etc., Bitcoin is readily available for many people to buy and transfer. And very quickly, people can buy Bitcoin and send it to a platform like Ledn, where it can be converted to dollars and be earning interest. And so I think that proxy for dollars is what's got Bitcoin holding up a lot better than assets like gold and even the S&P 500.
So would you say that Bitcoin is decoupling from traditional equities, or it's a more safe haven asset these days than other fiat currencies?
So it's a bit early to tell because the move just happened, and we'd have to see how the sustained, how price continues to behave. But you are seeing the correlation between Bitcoin and the S&P 500 and even the NASDAQ start dropping. Even if you look at it on like an hourly basis or a daily basis, you have to go into the shorter timeframes because that 30-day and 1-year correlation is still pretty strong. But you are starting to see glimpses of a disassociation between the S&P 500 and Bitcoin, which I think, a lot of people think is just a matter of time, right? Like for a while at the beginning, Bitcoin was trading very close to the yield on the 10-year trend, quite a bit like gold. And I think over time, as it matures, it's been trading a bit more like the S&P recently. And I think over time, it should trade more and more like gold.
All right. You also say that there's a strong correlation between the size
and I think over time,
of the Fed's balance sheet and the value of assets. Right now, they are shrinking their balance sheet. So maybe you could walk us through your short and long-term outlook on how that will impact the markets in Bitcoin in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to speak to that. So the Fed has been pretty clear in that it wants to keep the wealth effect in check between now and the end of the year. And what does that mean? The Fed doesn't really want anybody to feel more rich, and they don't want people to go out and spend more or buy more things. Therefore, it's trying to contain the value of people's portfolios by putting, in some ways, an artificial cap or ceiling on the prices of assets like the S&P 500, even U.S. real estate, and things even like Bitcoin. Going back to the last meeting when markets rallied after they interpreted the Fed's, comments as potentially, dovish, Powell got really upset. He ripped up his Jackson Hole speech, and he basically went out with a much shorter speech to basically tell markets that he meant business. And so what I think this is signaling is that the Fed is very much intending to keep asset prices in general in check between now and the end of the year. So if you look at the analyst targets for the S&P 500, all the way from Goldman to Bank of America, these targets are around 3,600, which is very close to where the S&P is trading. And so a lot of investors seem to be preparing for a sideways chop until the end of the year.
All right, Mauricio, we'll end it there. Thank you so much for your analysis on BTC price. That was Ledn Chief Strategy Officer Mauricio Di Bartolomeo. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and we'll do it all over again tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern in New York. Also join me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for First Mover. You're watching CoinDesk TV.